Degrees outside at 15 minutes past 8 o'clock hour. Green Mountain Warriors continuing now. Your host, Chris Lenois, joined in the studio by Chris Mays of the Brattleboro Reformer. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, too.
And we have Brattleboro Community Television in place to document our conversations with members of the local media. And, of course, we want to thank Brattleboro Savings and Loan for their financial support of this partnership with BCTV. Brattleboro Savings and Loan is an ultra-local programming sponsor of BCTV live events, municipal meetings, and our segments with members of the local media, like Chris, and covering some of the stories that he covered in the last week in the pages of the Brattleboro Reformer, as well as online at reformer.com. After a nice relaxing vacation on the Cape you were just telling me about, and you come back to what is normally a slow news time in any community, but not here in Brattleboro, right?
No, I got thrown right back into it right away.
Yeah, a lot of stories that happened while you were gone that you followed up on with the fire in Townshend and the plane crash in Winchester. I want to start, however, with a meeting that took place a week ago, Tuesday, actually. So exactly a week ago at Brooks Memorial Library, a parking study. And this is something that we've heard the Select Board talk about before. Give the listeners a little bit of background about what they hope to do with this parking study in downtown Brattleboro.
Sure. The Select Board approved a contract with Desmond Associates of Boston. And there are some consultants who are going to be looking at downtown parking in particular, and they've been going out and looking at the different parking spaces and all the activity that's happening downtown. And they're also looking for feedback from residents and people who visit the downtown. That could be just, people who come on vacation or people who come here just for work or to do something.
Anybody who parks,
yeah,
right? and some of those people are locals, and some of those people are visitors to this community. This is the first time I've actually seen the actual numbers of parking spaces downtown. I don't know if that's your case too, but to see what there are 2,290 parking spaces in downtown Brattleboro, that was pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, that was really the focus of the meeting. All this data that they've collected, and they still have some more data that they're going to be collecting.
Yeah, so people, if they want to see some of that information, this story that Chris had ended up in the weekend edition of the Brattleboro Reformer, as well as online at reformer.com. And the headline really for this was about the need for more public input on this. It doesn't sound like the meeting itself last Tuesday at the library was particularly well attended.
Well, actually, when it first started, I was the only one in the audience, and it was getting really close to start time, and they said, "Oh, geez, we only have one person from the media and then a bunch of town officials." So, but then as it started, people started trickling in. Not all the seats were full, but a good portion of them were. A lot of it was town officials.
Right. People who have a vested interest in this. But we hear a lot in this community just when you have conversations. I know I do. I'm sure you do as well. People with their different gripes or opinions about parking in downtown Brattleboro. What are some of the things you hear about parking in downtown Brattleboro when you're just going around town?
Well, I don't know if I hear too much about the parking in a lot, but I do know there are a lot of concerns about the congestion downtown at times. So I think some of this could be alleviated with the parking.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's part and parcel of the conversation. And let's give a little prop out to Chris Ratter right now, your photographer, for his drone footage of Malfunction Junction that accompanied this story. I actually saw him last week, and he was asking, "What do you think of the drone shots?" I said, "Yeah, those are pretty cool." So that's a nice little thing that the Reformer has in its quiver now to put out these aerial shots of things like Malfunction Junction in downtown Brattleboro. So what are some of the things that the members of the public and the town officials who came to the meeting last Tuesday were saying about parking in town?
Well, there were some concerns about the transportation center.
Yeah.
The parking garage. Some people didn't feel like it was a safe facility.
Right. Not necessarily adequacy of space, but
No.
just some of the security issues around that.
Right, yeah. And another member of the public had some concerns about overnight winter parking, how
Yeah.
that's banned, and he thinks there might be a better way to handle it.
And nobody felt that there was a shortage of parking. It didn't sound like when we talk about 2,290 parking spaces and private parking making up a significant portion of that, almost 40% of that, 1,405 spaces being used. That didn't sound to me like anybody was particularly concerned about the amount of parking.
No, capacity really wasn't an issue. I think they're going to be focusing on the flow of parking, maybe.
Uh-huh. And people felt it was close enough to the things that they wanted to get to. What about cost of parking? How big of an issue was that?
Well, they said some people want some more free spaces downtown, right. And they said they're going to come back to that there's some different issues that they're going to have to bring up.
They being Desmond Associates,
right,
these consultants. Yeah. So what is their charge here? What are their goals to do? Are they ultimately going to make recommendations on things like capacity and things like cost?
Yeah, the one consultant said he was going to have a Chinese menu, like a restaurant full of recommendations and ideas, and he would bring that to the public, and then they would kind of talk about it. Then it would go to the select board, and they would decide on what might be brought forward.
Well, I mean, what else can they do? It's not like there's even a place to expand parking unless you build more levels on the parking garage, which I doubt anybody wants to do, much less has the money to do.
Yeah.
And with regards to traffic flow, the only way you could improve that is to take away parking, I would imagine.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the recommendations are going to be. I know they did touch on that briefly. I don't think I put it in my article, but creating a new parking garage or new lot it's not really in the cards, I don't think.
Right. I mean, and I think it's worth noting that this is the first time they've looked at this, according to Rod Francis, the town planning director, since the 1980s.
Yeah.
So it's overdue to look at it. Is there another public meeting sometime in the near future?
I think they were planning one. I'm not sure when exactly. I think maybe.
But there will be at least one other.
Yeah, there's going to be one more public forum type thing. And they're also collecting input on a survey through surveymonkey.com.
Right, so people can go, and I think that's on the Brattleboro.org website as well. If people go there, they can find the parking survey.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw that there. And so people who have thoughts about parking in downtown Brattleboro, and is it specifically for downtown, or are they looking at other parts of town as well?
No, it's for downtown.
Specifically for downtown. All right, so go to the Brattleboro.org and have your voice heard on a parking issue in downtown Brattleboro. Other stories covered by Chris Mays, lots of them in the Reformer and online at reformer.com. We'll get to some of those after the bottom of the hour news break. 58 degrees outside at 21 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Green Mountain Mornings continuing now. Your host, Chris Lenois. Our conversation with Chris Mays of the Brattleboro Reformer about different stories he's covered in the past week. A lot of follow-ups on stories when he was on vacation, including a fire that took place at a horse farm called Frisians of Majesty in Townshend, resulted in the death of one of the employees of the farm, Shala Jolene Keene. An update today, Chris, in the Reformer with the medical examiner's report with the cause of death could not be determined. Is the final resulting here from the medical examiner, or what do we know?
That was the manner of death.
I see.
The cause was smoke inhalation.
I see. And when we think about what happened there at the barn, and it was an entire barn that ended up burning down, and there's a couple of different apartments in the barn. Oh, well, she was not one of the tenants in the apartment.
No, there were two other people who lived there.
Right, and they weren't in the apartments at the time.
No, they helped get all the horses that were in there at the time of the fire out and into safety. And
all the horses as well. None of them perished in the fire, which is certainly great news for the farm. But still, when you're talking about this, and we know it's not suspicious at this point, but still some unanswered questions as to the cause of the fire. This is still something that authorities are still investigating.
Yeah, they had some tests, some more lab tests to get back at the fire investigators from the state.
Right. And you've spoken with the family of the deceased, of Shala Keene, 32-year-old from Tennessee.
Well, more from Michigan. Her birthplace was Tennessee.
Okay.
So her family wanted to get her back to Michigan to have her buried with her grandparents.
Right, and that was a story you had last week, a Thursday story, and what a story it was when you were quoting the mother on the GoFundMe page, because she also lost her own mother as well as her daughter, like within a very short span of time.
Yeah.
What was that? Was it a week or less than a week?
It was within 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so that seemed to have been, that was successful. That GoFundMe, there's a few different things that are happening right now. That one was successful.
Yeah, she raised more than the $5,000 she hoped to raise.
Which is going to get her daughter's remains back home to have the proper burial and everything they want to do.
Yes.
The other GoFundMe pages, or I'll just say GoFundMe, I don't know if that was the website or not. It was, okay. But rebuilding the actual barn structure at the Frisians of Majesty Farm, because there was no insurance in that building.
Right.
And you said it's pretty highly valued. What it was valued at $1 million?
That's what the owner says it was.
And so it just, I mean, that raises questions for me as to what is required for insurance for something like that, especially because one of the initial reports referred to where the fire started as the lab. And I don't know what was meant by that when you're talking about what was this barn used for in addition to the tenants upstairs. What did they actually use the barn space for?
It was used for breeding horses.
Okay, so lab, that makes sense. I didn't know if it was just
Yeah.
where they stored the excess hay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
They had about $25,000 worth of equipment and supplies just for breeding purposes, according to the owner.
Okay, and so all that was destroyed by the fire.
Yeah, for now they can't do any of that.
And this is a business that I was not aware of out there, but pretty serious business here. How many horses do they have on the farm?
Over 100. The number's always changing, but yeah.
Sure, when you're breeding, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be and selling horses and people coming there to train with horses too. It seemed like it was part school, part breeding ground. Is that?
Yeah. There's a house where people can stay to either work or take a weekend getaway, and then there were the 2 apartments, and then where Shala was living, that was, I believe, with the owners, and that was another house on the property.
Right. And Robert Labrie is the owner of this Frisians of Majesty Farm. This has just got to be devastating to him.
Well, yeah, and right when I got back to from vacation, my first assignment was to go up to the property and see if anyone was there, and he was there, so I got to spend about an hour talking with him, and he was, beside himself pretty much.
Right, you're talking just a couple of days after the whole incident happened, and he's probably just looking at this barn and everything he's invested in it over the years in terms of that. Now, so how do we know how the rebuilding fundraiser is going?
I'm not sure at this point, but yeah, they're trying to raise $500,000 to rebuild it.
That's a pretty significant chunk of money there as far as that. But it sounds like they have a pretty well-established reputation in this horse breeding community, so that's not so far-fetched.
Yeah, they have a lot of support, and there's another GoFundMe page just to help with the day-to-day horse stuff on the farm.
Right. Did they lose a lot of, you mentioned some of the lab equipment and things like that for breeding, but did they lose a lot of supplies, like just how they feed horses and care for the horses? Was that stored in this structure?
No, what happened was there was some infrastructure that was damaged, so some water pipes and electric. So they were relying on some goodwill from their neighbors, as well as some of their supporters were coming with supplies and helping out with bringing hay, and water came from their neighbors.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about probably still 100 horses at any given time on that property, and so a lot to care for. And now being down that structure, that certainly is a problem. People can learn more about how to donate to the Frisians of Majesty Farm by going to the GoFundMe page. It's also in last Thursday's edition of the Brattleboro Reformer. So if you go to thereformer.com, there's some information about if people want to make contributions to help provide the horses with what they need on a given weekly basis. Now, you were also following up on this plane crash in Winchester. and quite a story. This man, John Everson, who was the pilot of the plane. Give us a little bit of background on him.
Yeah, he was a Connecticut man known to have a lot of experience flying. He was on his way to it was basically, I don't know what you would call it, but it was an event for stunt plane drivers, flyers.
I would call it an aerial show.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's right or not, but do we know? I mean, you say when you spoke with his cousin that mechanical failure is the likelihood of why the plane crashed.
That's what the family thinks, just because of how much experience the guy had flying.
But I haven't heard if he was, or I guess I haven't heard why he was flying in that particular area. And was he practicing stunts, or was he just flying and there was a mechanical failure? Because I've actually seen that in these parts. I've seen planes, these small acrobatic or aerobatic, I guess is the term, for a plane, and you talk about this particular model, the Extra 300. I've seen people practicing their aerial stunts. Was he out there kind of rehearsing for this aerial show in Winchester?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The investigation is supposed to be wrapping up soon, and I guess we'll find out then.
Right. I mean, but and it's hard to tell if any eyewitnesses, because the only eyewitness reports we had of it, and I know you weren't here at the time, you didn't do that, but it was just like people heard a crash all of a sudden. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like anybody saw. Because you would, obviously, if you see a plane performing those stunts, it stands out. It's something that you notice, and it doesn't sound like anybody noticed that. So it'll be interesting to see, do we have a sense as to when this report will be?
It's supposed to be early this week, I believe, yeah.
Okay. So another update on that coming soon. Anything else about the backstory of John Everson when you were reporting on it that you found remarkable?
Not really. Just that his family was also involved in flying. You know, his father was a big time flyer, and his cousin was. So
yeah, including in different military operations. There's a lot of great backstory there in your article about that. And that was in Wednesday's edition of the Reformer. I want to close out with another story that was on the front page Wednesday with your byline over in your neck of the woods, the Deerfield Valley, and the Gathering Place, an organization in this community who's been looking for a site in the Deerfield Valley for I don't know how long now. It's been at least a couple of years, right?
I think almost 4 years.
Yeah, and so now they've found a Chinese restaurant, of all places, to take over, the First Walk. Now, why is this site becoming available?
Well, it's been on the market for a few years now. I actually frequent that restaurant, about every month or so. So I'm sad to see it go, but I know that the owners are kind of happy to be done with it. And it's a perfect place for the Gathering Place because it's one floor, it's accessible to wheelchairs, and it worked out for them.
Yes, First Walk was a place that if we had a chance to get off campus at Mount Snow and go for a quick bite to eat in town, First Walk was a great place to go because it's not too far from the mountain. And do you know about the special Chinese fortune cookies they have there?
I have had them before.
You've had these special Chinese fortune cookies? Yes, indeed. And special, just the special fortunes, which are a little bit, what shall we describe them? Off color, perhaps, is the best description of those.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine haven't been, I wouldn't describe mine as that, but maybe they've changed.
You can ask for fortune cookies there that have special adult themed messages in them.
Oh, really?
You didn't know that?
Oh,
how long have you been going there?
Before I even moved here, so
you'll
over
have to
10 years.
You'll have to go and check that out and see if they still do that before they sell. But they're still open for a little while, right?
Yeah, they're open till Labor Day, so we'll go in there and get at least one more meal.
Right, indeed.
I usually end up spending like $100 when I go there because we get leftovers for the whole week.
Nice. Now, you spoke with Mary Fredette, the executive director of the Gathering Place, and you just talked a little bit about why this is a good site for them. Obviously, it being a single floor for the population the Gathering Place serves, good access to public transportation, being right there on Route 100. What do they have to do to get this space ready after they do take control of it? And we're still in the purchase and sale agreement aspect of it, but it doesn't sound like they're concerned about inspections or anything.
No, they have to do some inspections, like you said, and there's gonna have to be some renovations. I'm not sure the extent of that. That's something that Mary and we're gonna follow up on.
And some fundraising.
Yeah, I think the towns are pretty much Dover and Wilmington have said that they're committed to giving some funding to it.
Yeah.
And then they're also going to be looking for donations from people.
Yeah. I mean, there's already a sizable group of folks from the Deerfield Valley that access the services at the gathering place, and probably even more once they get a site over there. So great
Yep.
news for that great organization, and people can read about that on reformer.com. Other stories you're working on here as we move into this week here that people should be looking for.
Well, last night I went to a Jamaica Select Board meeting that was pretty a lot. There was a lot going on there. They're talking about maybe doing something, offering water or wastewater to the downtown because there's some issues there.
Like building an actual town sewer and water system
They're
in
not
Jamaica?
there yet.
I was
but
going to
they're
say.
at maybe doing a study and maybe creating a fire district so that it would only be for the village, because in order for businesses to grow there or to bring more business there, they really have to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, you hear Chris Campany of the Wyndham Regional Commission talking about that's really one of those main barriers for any of these places that want to even grow a little bit, is being able to offer that town water and sewer. So interesting that Jamaica taking the plunge, so to speak. All right. Well, we'll look for that, and we'll look for you again here in the studio in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Chris.
Yep, thank you.
All right, back to wrap up this edition of the Green Mountain Mornings program right after these messages.